Here we're transitioning to the third and final section of Chapter 1 lectures. Again, if you need a break, this is an excellent place to take one. Scales of measurement. So this is one of the most loathed topics of research methods and statistics. So when I learned these, I was told that I needed to memorize them and then I would have to regurgitate them and, matching questions, multiple choice questions, all of those kinds of things. So a quick note about my philosophy. I don't agree with that at all. We're not going to do that in this class. Instead, what I want to do is focus on the application of this idea. Why is this idea important? Why do we need to care about it? Those kinds of things. As far as I'm concerned, you can go in your textbook. We have the internet now. We can just search that stuff if you forget it in the future, which, you're honestly not going to remember it beyond this course anyway. So instead, what I want you to do is focus on understanding why this is important and why we need to know about it. Now, the answer to that question is pretty simple. Depending on how your data is set up, it will limit the type of statistical analyses you can do. So you have a variable, right? So this is just something that we collect data on. Earlier I mentioned asking people how happy they are. So people rate on a scale of 1 to 7 how happy they are. So we have a happiness variable. Some people respond 5, 6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 7, 6, and we get this nice data set based on that. Happiness is our variable. You can ask questions in different ways, and that will produce different scales of measurement. Now, how you do that limits what you can do with that data. So if you ask, rate on a scale of 1 to 2, that limits you pretty extensively. If you ask people to provide, their gender or their class status, so that's a certain scale of measurement, and that's going to limit the kind of statistical analysis you can do. So as we're going through this topic, please work to understand why it's important, how these different scales could limit you, and as far as memorizing which is which, honestly, I don't think that's worth your time and effort. What I would prefer that you do, and what I'm hoping to teach you over the course of this semester, is that I want to change the way you think about the world a little bit. I want to make you slightly more scientific in your thinking. I want to make you slightly more objective, and definitely more critical. I want you to be a more critical consumer of research, and understanding statistics and how to apply them is a piece of that. So as you're studying, as you're struggling with the scales of measurement concept, as we all do, just remember my purpose in this course and what I hope for you, and save the memorization for Google. That being said, we do have 4 different kinds of measurement here. So remember, the kind of measurement is really going to limit what kind of statistical analysis you can do. We'll learn more about that in the coming months, but for now, we have nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Nominal is just an identity or classification, so we might ask people for their gender, and so here we have a dichotomous male-female. We might ask people for their class status. Are you, junior, senior, freshman, sophomore, all of those kinds of things. So it's really just a name, so nominal name. We also have ordinal, so this is a rank or order. We might have class rankings, first through last, so are you top of your class, or number 58 out of 500, whatever you happen to be. It's an order. We have interval, order in equal units, no true zero. So intelligence test scores are an example of this. So, we give an IQ test, you can get a range of scores. You never really score 0, but we do know that the difference, between 100 and 105 is about the same as 100 to 95. They're all equal units. We understand what those units mean. We have ratio, so again this is order, equal units, and there is an absolute 0. So height in inches would be an example of that. So again, I want you to have a basic understanding of these, but really what's most important is understanding how these can be applied. And again, we'll go through that as we go through the semester. So just keep in mind that these exist, and maybe kind of, make a mark in your book, make a jot down something in your notes about like, okay, I might need to come back and reference this in the future. Because like I said, I wouldn't spend your time trying to memorize this. So these classifications I think are much more useful and really easier to understand. So we have continuous data, we have discrete data. So continuous data is measured along a continuum. It's measured at any place beyond the decimal point. So they have an example here, an Olympic sprinter's time to finish a race. With continuous data, we have many options for statistical analyses. So we can do correlation, we can do regression, we can do ANOVAs, we can do t-tests using this, and then of course some more advanced stuff that I won't bother you with in this course. With discrete, we have separate and indivisible categories, whole numbers only. So socioeconomic class, maybe we have some rankings there. We might have gender would be considered a discrete variable. So male, female. Oftentimes in your data set you want to have both continuous and discrete. So I mentioned a second ago that continuous data allows for a t-test. Well, you also need a discrete variable for a t-test. Something like gender would work out really well. You can do you could do crosstabs, you can do some frequency analyses with discrete data. So everything serves its purpose, and if you have an understanding of the kind of data you're working with and then the statistical analyses that go well with that data, you become a much better consumer of research, a much better producer of research. We have some umbrella terms: quantitative versus qualitative data or variables. So quantitative is what we're dealing with in this course. Quantitative deals with numbers. It's all of the fun stuff that you're all looking forward to this semester. I actually think that quantitative data is a bit easier to work with. I worked with both when I was consulting, and I've done a little bit of qualitative analysis for some papers. Qualitative is much more difficult in my opinion because it deals with words. So typically what you're dealing with qualitative data is you'll ask someone an open-ended question. So tell me about your experiences on September 11th, 2001 is a question that I might ask in some of my autobiographical memory research. And then the person, talks for 5 minutes on end about what they did. You have to go back through for all of your participants. You can have lower sample sizes here, maybe 20, and then you have to find common themes that come up across these people, and you have to do it all by hand. There is software coming up that can do this for you automatically, but in my experience, it just does not work as well. So in my opinion, quantitative is different. I know a lot of people disagree with me. I believe our sociology department here at IU East offers a research course in qualitative data. If you're interested in research, I know some of you are science writers, tech writers, you might consider taking that course as well. It's definitely an important piece of research. We just won't have time to get to it this semester. So here's the table with examples that I promised you. Hopefully you can see it in this slide, but if you can't, it is on page 20 of your second edition, so feel free to pull that out if you want. So what this is doing is giving us some examples of variables. It's then classifying it in different ways for us. So it's telling us if it's continuous or discrete, qualitative versus quantitative, and then what scale of measurement it is. So if you want some practice identifying these, I would focus my time on recognizing if it's continuous or discrete, and then qualitative versus quantitative. The scales of measurement, honestly, I think that's a little bit more difficult and not as important in this course, so I would probably work with those first two columns. But you might look at the first variable. It says sex. I'm going to call that gender instead. I guess it's updated on the slide, but not in my textbook. So is that continuous or discrete? So you have to ask yourself, are there limited values that this could take, or could it be any number of values? And so, of course, gender is typically male, female, so that will be a discrete variable. Here it says qualitative versus quantitative, and this is tricky because you have to look at how it's represented here. So because it says male or female, they have it down as qualitative. If you put 1 equals male and 2 equals female, that would then be quantitative. So quantitative will deal with numbers, qualitative will deal with words. And then the scale of measurement, of course, is nominal. They're just names that we've assigned based on certain characteristics. So you could go through for some practice with this if you want. Maybe mark it so that you can come back to it as we move through the semester. Again, if it's continuous versus discrete, if it's qualitative or quantitative, it's going to limit you in what kind of statistical analyses you can do. So make sure you're familiar with these ideas and how to apply them.